Gosh, every time they do something that looks like they're doing the right thing when it comes to the Second Amendment, the self-proclaimed most 2A-friendly Department of Justice ever did it again. They just killed Missouri's SAPA. And here's what they don't want you to know. Patriots, buckle up, because what I'm about to tell you and walk you through should outrage every one of you. Every freedom-loving American in this country should be irate right now. The Department of Justice, backed by some activist judges, has officially killed Missouri's Second Amendment Preservation Act, better known as SAPA. And they did it using the exact weapon the founders warned us about, the dangerous and ever-expanding power of the federal government. And here's the worst part. The Supreme Court, yes, this Supreme Court, refused to even take the case. They didn't rule against SAPA because they didn't want to go on record. They simply let the lower courts strike it down unchallenged by refusing to hear the appeal. Missouri's law is now dead. The DOJ is celebrating, and the rest of America just watched the federal government tell an entire state, you are not allowed to shield your citizens from our federal gun control. Let's break down exactly what happened, why it matters to every single one of us, and how this fight is far from over. This is Guns and Gadgets, the premier source for Second Amendment news and the channel the DOJ and the AG hate the most. And today we're going deep into something they just did. First, what was SAPA really? Missouri passed SAPA in 2021 as part of a nationwide push to stop Joe Biden's Department of Justice from weaponizing federal gun laws against peaceful, law-abiding citizens. SAPA said that Missouri law enforcement could not assist the federal government in enforcing federal gun control laws. They want to do it fine. We're not going to help them. If any agency did assist the feds, the citizens impacted could sue for $50,000 per violation. And most importantly, the law declared several federal gun control acts as invalid in Missouri because they violated the Second Amendment. Phenomenal. We even had former Missouri Attorney General, now co-deputy director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Andrew Bailey, on this show a few times, and we talked about it. But Missouri basically said, we will not allow our officers to become enforcers of unconstitutional federal gun control. It was bold, it was patriotic, and it represented exactly what the founders intended when they created a system of federalism, where states act as a check on federal abuse. But the DOJ absolutely could not tolerate this. Before I tell you how the DOJ launched their attack, Patriots, you already know that supporting the Second Amendment means supporting the companies that stand with us. And that's why I drink Blackout coffee. In fact, I'm having one right now. Blackout Coffee has donated well over $150,000 this year alone to organizations fighting every single day to defend our right to keep and bear arms. That's not talk, that's action. And right now we've extended our Cyber Monday sale. It's now a Cyber Week sale. And you can buy 2 items and get 1 free on coffee, tea, and cocoa. Add them to the cart, add 3 to the cart. It does it automatically for you. If you want coffee roasted right here in America by patriots who put their money where their mouth is, head on over to blackoutcoffee.com/GNG and stock up today. Support companies that support our rights and fuel your freedom with Blackout Coffee. All right, almost immediately after SAPA was enacted, the Biden administration's Department of Justice, led by then Attorney General Merrick Garland, what a miserable kraut he was. He was just a curmudgeon. He was so bitter that he didn't get on the Supreme Court, and he took it out on every gun owner in the country. But Garland, he and his DOJ sued the state of Missouri. Why? Because SAPA directly threatened the federal government's ability to enforce NFA rules, firearms registration requirements, various ATF enforcement actions, and anything else Congress or the ATF could possibly dream up. You see, SAPA didn't restrict the federal agents, as many would have you believe. It restricted state participation in federal enforcement, which states absolutely have the right to do. Now, states refuse to assist the feds all the time on immigration, on marijuana laws, on environmental regulations, and the courts don't blink an eye. But whoa, You have the balls to protect your citizens from the unconstitutional gun control? Woohoo! We're going to end that, pal. But the moment a state tries to protect gun rights, crazy. Now, suddenly, the Department of Justice claims that the sky is falling. That's why they fought this. They argued that SAPA violated the Supremacy Clause because Missouri was supposedly nullifying federal law. But here's the important part. Here's the important distinction. Missouri wasn't telling the feds they couldn't enforce their laws. Missouri simply said, you're not using our people, you're not using our officers, our manpower, our dollar bills, because we're not going to help you. That is 100% legal, it is 100% constitutional, and the federal government has zero authority to force states to enforce federal law. It's the same reason you can't have your local city cop lock people up on a federal charge. Can't do it. They don't have federal jurisdiction. It's the same reason why every time a federal agency does a search warrant, ATF, DEA, you name it, they have to have the local guys there. But the DOJ convinced the courts otherwise, because when the Second Amendment is involved, the rules magically change. Then the courts struck SAPA down. A federal district judge struck down SAPA immediately. Then the case went up to the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals, and they upheld that ruling. And here's what they claimed. The Eighth Circuit said that SAPA violated the Supremacy Clause because Missouri declared federal gun laws invalid. But remember, SAPA prohibited state enforcement. It didn't bind the federal government at all. So it was a book of lies. It was a political statement wrapped inside a state-level enforcement restriction, something states do constantly. But the courts took the DOJ's side, ruling that Missouri was interfering with federal priorities. Now, let me remind you of something very important. The Supremacy Clause only applies to constitutional federal laws. As Chief Justice John Marshall said in Marbury versus Madison way back in 1803, and I'll say it again, a law repugnant to the Constitution is void. If federal gun control laws violate the Second Amendment, then they are not supreme, they are not valid, and they do not override the rights of the people. The courts ignored that. The DOJ ignored that. And the federal machine churned forward. Then there was the Supreme Court's role, or lack of one. Now, here's where things get infuriating. Missouri appealed to the United States Supreme Court, hoping that the Supreme Court would step in and resolve the critical constitutional question. Andrew Bailey, we talked about that here on this channel. Can a state refuse to enforce unconstitutional federal gun control laws? But in October of 2023, the Supreme Court quietly declined to hear the case. They didn't issue a ruling. They didn't weigh in on the merits. They simply chose not to take it. And when the Supreme Court declines a case, the lower court's ruling becomes final. So the Eighth Circuit's anti-SAPA decision stood, and Missouri's law is dead. Not because the Supreme Court ruled against it or didn't rule against it back then, but because there was a second bite at the apple. And they tried again, and it made it all the way to the Supreme Court again. And the bunch of cowards refused to take it again. Now, this is why the DOJ is celebrating today. This is why gun control activists are calling this a major victory. This is why the ATF is popping champagne. Because one of the strongest pro-Second Amendment state laws in the nation was dismantled without a single Supreme Court opinion. And now, SAPA is gone. Where do things stand now? Well, let's be absolutely clear. Missouri SAPA is no longer enforceable. The Eighth Circuit ruling stands as the final word. The Supreme Court has not weighed in on the constitutional question. Missouri lawmakers currently, right now, are trying to reenact SAPA with new language. But any new law will immediately face DOJ lawsuits because they're so pro-2A and more long court battles. This isn't just a Missouri issue anymore. This is now a blueprint for the DOJ, and there are other states that have passed similar laws that give similar protections to their citizens. But guess what? The self-proclaimed most 2A-friendly Department of Justice in this country's history is coming for you next. Because Pam Bondi and her crew, while they're quick to tell a state your gun laws are unconstitutional, they demand that every one of the federal gun control laws stand and are enforced. And if they can crush SAPA in Missouri, they can and will go after similar laws in Kansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, Arizona, Montana, Texas, and any other state that tries to shield its citizens from federal gun control. This fight is moving national. Now, what does this mean for the future of the Second Amendment? Well, this entire situation raises a massive constitutional question. Do states have the right to refuse participation in federal gun control enforcement? Under the 10th Amendment, yes, they do. Under the Supreme Court anti-commandeering precedent, yes, they do. Under basic principles of federalism, yes, they do. But the DOJ and the lower courts said no. And if that principle sticks, if federal agencies can force states to help enforce federal gun control laws, then the federal government just gained a powerful new weapon: the ability to nationalize gun control through state law enforcement. And that should terrify every gun owner in this country. I'll say it again, and every time I say it, I get cops in the comments who get pissed off. And for somebody who did it for 24 years and was honored to try to follow the Constitution every step of the way, and honored to buck gun control every step of the way, none of this is enforced unless you all do it. Remember who you swore an oath to. You didn't swear an oath to federal gun control. You swore an oath to the Constitution of the United States and the Bill of Rights. And you owe it to every person in your jurisdiction to make sure that you don't trample those rights. This should terrify every gun owner in the country. Missouri SAPA being struck down is not the end of the story. It's a warning, a giant flashing neon sign telling America the federal government will crush any attempt to shield citizens from unconstitutional gun control unless the states fight harder. Now, this is why cases like Bruin, Cargill, Mock versus Garland, and Duncan versus Bonta matter so much. This is why state-level action matters. This is why elections for Attorney General, State Senate, or Governor matter in your states. If states are going to defend the Second Amendment, they need lawmakers with backbones and legal teams who understand the Constitution. We also need groups like Gun Owners of America, Second Amendment Foundation, FPC, yes, the new NRA 2.0, as long as they keep doing things the right way, and National Association for Gun Rights. And you name all these groups. We need them. So I'll leave you with this. Do you think the Supreme Court should have taken the SAPA case? Do you think states should be able to refuse participation in federal gun control? And do you think Missouri should try again? Or focus on constitutional carry enforcement instead? Never going to get votes in the Senate. Not as it's currently made up. People ask me every day, what's an update on constitutional carry or reciprocity? Never happening until you get 60 yes votes in the Senate. Drop a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are down below. Because if the federal government can bulldoze SAPA, then every state in America just became a target. Patriots, stay alert, stay prepared, stay armed, and stay free. This is Jared at Guns and Gadgets, your premier source for Second Amendment news. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so that you never miss a critical update affecting your rights. Stay safe, stay vigilant, and carry your gun. Take care.